Conservatives spent the last week online fighting over the cost of a burrito. It may not have been a tasty treat, but there was something to learn from it. Let's dig in. Welcome to Sharpening Arrows, where we train teens to think biblically about life and politics. I'm your host, Victor Jakes. Now we are back to our normal filming location, which you can see if you are on youtube.com/@sharpeningarrows, youtube.com/@sharpeningarrows. Thanks for sticking with us the last couple of weeks. I was trying to figure out how to get my ring light not to show up in my glasses, and I didn't figure it out, which you could have seen on youtube.com/@sharpeningarrows. Now, this is a unique podcast, parents, and I encourage you to listen with your teens and preteens. I know we are getting back to school, at least here in Nevada. Yes, it is completely crazy, but we go back to school at the beginning of August when it is 115 degrees out. And there is actually a reason for that they're trying to end the semester before Christmas, but I do think it's crazy. But as you get back into your school routines, especially if you are a homeschooler or you drive your kids to school, I encourage you to work this podcast into your routine. We are going to talk openly about the best ideas of the political left and non-Christians. We don't have to be afraid of those ideas. Those destructive messages are pervasive in our culture. What we need to do is train our children, sharpen our arrows, as it were, by helping them learn to think. Then they'll be prepared as they leave our home and graduate to handle those issues on their own. And teens, here's what's in it for you. If you've ever wanted to debate like Charlie Kirk or ask questions like Ali Bastucky, the best way to do that is to fully understand your opponent's arguments. Now, before we dive into the burrito wars, I actually want to talk about this for a little bit. Yesterday, I, for some reason, got in my mind that my fans in my house were going the wrong direction. You may not realize this, but if the fans go clockwise, they're pushing the air up and pushing the hot air down, which is very bad when you live in the Las Vegas area. And so I wanted to make sure they were all going counterclockwise, which means the fan blade, the top part, the part that's going forward is a little higher than the bottom part. Anyway, as I was doing this, I discovered that the fan blades themselves were loose. Not great. So I did what I always do in this situations like this. I called my father-in-law. I'm not handy. My father-in-law knows everything. So I called him, thank you, Greg. And he's like, yeah, you shouldn't be running those and you should tighten the screws. Okay, there was a problem. There was just a small gap between the screw and the rest of the fan, the light fixture of the fan. And the screwdriver I had couldn't fit. So today I went to Lowe's and I knew they would have something that could fix it. Sure enough, they did. Again, if you were on youtube.com/@sharpeningarrows, you could see it, but it's a little ratchet and you can actually put in a screwdriver bit, which is really cool. Worked great. Let's have a pause point. This is another unique thing about this podcast. I encourage you to actually stop the podcast and ask your children these questions. How many people were involved in selling me this racket? Well, let's think. Someone or a company had to invent it. Then someone had to design it. Someone had to actually produce it. If you want to take a step back further, someone had to get the metal to the company that was producing it. Someone had to sell it to Lowe's. Someone had to ship it. Lowe's doesn't just appear, right? Someone actually had to build the store. If you want to dig into that, someone had to create the plans for the store. Someone had to be the electrician, the concrete, that actually construct the store. Then there are the stockers at the store. There are the managers at the store. All of those people played a part in me obtaining this ratchet, which helped me fix the fans in my house. So let's have another pause point. Why would those people do this? What could cause thousands of people, if not tens of thousands of people, many of them complete strangers to each other, to coordinate so that I could go to Lowe's 5 minutes from my house and buy the exact tool I needed for less than $20. How could that happen? I really encourage you to stop and think about this. Well, what could cause these people to coordinate in such a way that they're helping me, someone they don't even know, that the vast majority of them aren't even going to ever even see me, yet they work together in this, what appears to me, seamless way so that I can buy this tool that literally saved me hundreds of dollars not having to replace these fans. Well, why did each of them do it? They did it for profit. They did it because they thought it would make them money. The owners of the company create their companies, whether it's making a ratchet, whether it's building Lowe's, because I think that's going to make money. People show up to work thinking they're going to make money. So the next time someone denigrates profit or tries to tell you that, oh, it's terrible that someone's making a profit, remember what profit did. It produced something in a non-spiritual way. It produced something miraculous. It coordinated the efforts of thousands of people across time and space so that I could buy the exact tool I wanted, or you could buy the exact item that you wanted from any of a number of stores, whether it's a piece of clothing or electronic or a piece of sporting equipment, or even something to help you with your schoolwork. People did that because of profit. In their own self-interest, they ended up helping you. Now, to be clear, I am certainly not the first person to notice this. This idea goes back, it might go back even further, but the person who's very famous for writing about this, his name is Adam Smith. He was an economist in the 18th century, and he wrote a book called The Wealth of Nations. And here's what he said. It is not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from their regard to their own interest. We address ourselves not to their humanity, but to their self-love, and never talk to them of our own necessities, but of their advantages. See, that's the beauty of the free market, is it creates situations where both of us win. I valued this ratchet more than the $18 I spent on it, and Lowe's valued the $18 more than this ratchet. We both won. In a free market, it creates value as people engage in free transactions. That is why the free market is both moral, but also creates so much economic wealth. Be grateful for profit. All right, that is a long-winded lead-in, and it will sort of tie into the discussion that we are going to have. But let's have another pause point. How much does a burrito cost? And how much should a burrito cost? What do you think? Well, at the local Cafe Rio that I go to, I'd say a burrito is about $11.50, and that is quite a bit more than it was 6 years ago, and certainly more than it was 10 or 12 years ago. All right, this all started on the website X. Matt Walsh, conservative commentator, terrific commentator, very insightful. He wrote this: grocery prices are insane. They're still rising. Addressing this problem should be the number one priority of every elected leader. End the stupid foreign wars and focus on this issue. It's one of the main reasons socialists are gaining power. Okay, so what Matt Walsh is saying is that grocery prices are going too high, they're going up, and that addressing it should be the top priority, and we should leave the war in Iran because it's driving people to socialism, these high prices. All right. Andrew Colvette, who works with Turning Point USA, another great guy, wrote in response, one of our TP USA college students gave me his take on affordability. A burrito shouldn't cost $20. Yeah, a lot of this is hangover from COVID and Biden-era inflation, but the lived experience is the same. It just feels like basic things cost too much. Okay, so I want you just to kind of see what's happening here, and usually we'll take an issue and we'll lay out one set of arguments and then look at another set of arguments, but I actually kind of just want to talk through all of the issues, all of the tweets that we're going to go through here. And it's really helpful to dig into disagreements on the conservative side of the aisle, because you can't cheat. You can't in your mind go, oh, I generally agree with that person, so that's probably the right argument. Here we're going to hear people who personally I enjoy listening to, think have really interesting things to say, very insightful things to say, and they disagree. Okay, this is question 7 of the grade 8. Remember, the grade 8 are the questions that we put in our mental toolbox to help us think about issues. And so when we have these kind of intramural squabbles on the right, it really makes us think about this question. Am I focused on the speaker or the argument? Because you can't just focus on the speaker, because usually you would, if you're conservative, you'd agree with these speakers. So you really have to dig into the argument here. Okay, so Matt Walsh is saying that grocery prices, that high prices should be the top priority of elected officials. We should leave the war in Iran because it's driving prices higher. And then also that high prices are a reason that socialists are gaining power, that young people are, that socialism is appealing to young people because they feel priced out of the marketplace. Okay, so whenever there's something like this, there can be lots of things true at once. And we can say that certainly that grocery prices are a lot higher than they were pre-COVID. As someone who shops for a family of 9, I can personally attest to that. Addressing this problem should be the number one priority of every elected official. Okay. What we're going to see here in these arguments that go back and forth is not very directly, but what's happening here is there's really a debate over trade-offs. Trade-offs, question 4 of the grade 8 is, what are the trade-offs? And trade-offs is, if you have one thing, you can't have the other thing. So if you go to In-N-Out for dinner, you can't go to Chick-fil-A for dinner, right? I'm in the In-N-Out drive-through line. I'm waiting for a half hour. That means I'm not in the Chick-fil-A drive-through line for 15 minutes, right? I'm in one or the other. So even if I like both things, I can only choose one. And oftentimes these debates over trade-offs are really important. And it's really important to think about what the trade-offs are, because when there's an argument from the left, when there's an argument for socialism, we can say there is an appealing part of that there's something that's actually appealing, but here are the trade-offs. And I think we're going to see this thread kind of go through these arguments. All right, Ben Shapiro, another great conservative commentator. He responds, I hear that young people are upset about $20 burritos. Okay, young people, a burrito does not cost $20. If you're paying $20 for a burrito and you're not independently wealthy, you're doing life wrong. We have enough problems as a country without insane expectations that the government is going to provide us gourmet quality burritos. All right, let's have a pause point. Should you pay $20 for a burrito if you are not independently wealthy? What do you think? Okay, no, you should not pay $20 for a burrito. Absolutely not. Okay, and this is responded to. And actually, Ben's going to go a little further. Ben Shapiro is going to say, all right, I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure out how much of the back and forth to give you. Okay, Sean Davis, publisher of The Federalist, great website, really enjoy The Federalist, says, current neocon war inflation messaging. Fast food burritos are only for the independently wealthy. Burritos. And he's replying to Ben Shapiro. Okay, so this, what he's doing here, what Sean is doing here is he's creating a straw man. And let's have a pause point. What is a straw man argument? Okay, what a straw man argument is, and if you follow politics, or even if you just are having a conversation with your friends or your parents, you might notice this. It's when someone has a position and then their opponent takes a really skewed version of that position. And so it's kind of the analogy is that, instead of fighting the person, you're fighting a straw man, a scarecrow, right? That can't punch back, that looks like the person, but is not the person, right? You're not fighting the real argument. You're creating this straw man in order to easily punch it down. Okay, so that's what Sean Davis is doing here. Is he's saying fast food burritos. Sean is saying that Ben Shapiro is saying fast food burritos are only for the independently wealthy. No, that's not what Ben Shapiro said. What Ben Shapiro said is that if you're paying for a $20 burrito and you're not independently wealthy, you're doing life wrong. And that is true because fast food burritos do not cost $20, right? If you go to Taco Bell, you are not spending $20 for a burrito. Now, you might be spending quite a bit more than you spent 6 years ago, or your parents spent 6 years ago. And if you go back 25 years ago to when I was in college and McDonald's had a $1 menu with a McDouble on it, which was incredible, you're certainly spending more than that, right? But Sean is taking Ben's argument and he's twisting it and saying, fast food burritos are only for the independently wealthy. No, that's not what Ben's saying. All right, here's what Ben responds. Current, quote, common good conservative, end quote, inflation messaging. $20 burritos are a human right, but also every serious methodology for making them cheaper, like kill the tariffs, break the unions, and deregulate the food supply chain, isn't America first, so we need to complain a lot about how America is cooked and then surrender to Iran. Okay, so I think this is actually a pretty good response because Ben is getting at, okay, we think we all agree that food is too expensive. What would be some of the things that we would do to decrease the price of food? Okay, because what happens in a free market is that if you see that the burrito company is making $20 burritos, we talked about this a little bit last week, and they're making lots of money, they have lots of profit, what's that going to do? It's going to incentivize other people to go into the burrito making business, and then when there are more burritos being made, the price of burritos is going to come down. And so when we see that not happening, when we see, that good is more expensive than it used to be, quite a bit more expensive than it used to be, but the price isn't going down, what's happening? And look, when it comes to the economy, there can be lots of things happening, but we do know some of the things that happen is that if you increase tariffs, you increase prices. Now, there may be reasons for doing that. Remember, we're going to go back to question 4. What are the trade-offs? There may be reasons for national security that we need tariffs on certain items, and I actually think that's true in certain cases. But we have to understand the trade-off, right? Prices are going to be higher. The labor unions have been pushing very successfully in some places for fight for 15, a $15 an hour minimum wage. In California, the minimum wage for fast food workers is $20 an hour. Okay, if you make all the fast food companies pay $20 an hour in wages, let's have a pause point. What happens next? All right, remember that's the question 1 of the grade 8. What happens next? Right? These grade 8 questions are questions that we are taking out like tools from a toolbox, and we're using them when we come across a policy issue. Remember, the most important thing isn't that you think like me, it's that you think. It's that you use this mind that God has given you. Okay, so if the government comes in and says you have to pay your workers $20 an hour, what happens next? Lots of things. Okay, remember, the economy is complicated. It's not just going to be one thing. You're going to see an increase in automation. All of a sudden, it becomes cheaper compared to hiring someone to have a machine. Okay, we've seen that, right? You go into McDonald's, you lots of these restaurants, you order on the app, or you go in and you do a touch screen. When I worked at McDonald's over 25 years ago, yes, I'm very old. One of the main jobs at McDonald's was taking people's order, and you were right there, and you were, putting it into the machine, taking their order. Now, if I had been making $20 an hour, which I was not, by the way. I was not making anywhere close to $20 an hour making fast food. McDonald's and other fast food companies have done what they can to get rid of labor. But there's only so much of that you can do. And so if your input costs go up, then your prices go up too. And if the government is the one saying you have to pay this above market rate for labor, guess what? All of the prices are going to go up. And we're not going to see, first of all, we're not going to see profit, right? Because the company is not making money. So you're not going to have more companies coming into the space and creating more burritos, but you're just going to see the prices go up. All right, deregulate the food supply chain. All right, this is another example of, if the government kind of gets into something, it often raises the prices, and it raises the prices for everyone because, all of the companies are taking from the food supply chain. All right, and let's see. This is a columnist for the Washington Post, Mark Thiessen. He's replying to Andrew Colvette. He says, "Cry me a river. The burritos in the college cafeteria are included in your meal plan." All right, so he's telling young people, deal with it. Could be a lot worse. Go eat the cheap food. Vice President J.D. Vance weighs in on X. I'm surprised to hear Mark say this. If you've ever met him in person, it's quite obvious the man has never missed a burrito. Yes. That was the Vice President of the United States responding to public figure and calling him fat. Let's have a pause point. What do you think about that? All right. I personally don't like it. Some people might think, oh, it's clever. Oh, it's just, he's appealing to the youths. And, oh, look, what a clever way to call someone fat. Okay, look. Whether you agree with someone or not, the fact that someone called another person fat is not an argument, right? Question 7. Am I focused on the speaker or the argument? Calling someone fat does not make your argument correct, does not advance your argument, even if you normally agree with the person, even if you like the person. So I thought that was disappointing. All right, Joel Berry, who produces the Jeremy Boring Show, really interesting. I really like following him on X. Not that I'd ever recommend anyone get on X, aside from professional reasons. He writes, "Last night my wife made homemade burritos for our family of 8, and it cost less than $20 total for everyone. I'm beginning to think the affordability crisis is really an I don't know how to cook crisis." Oh boy. Oh boy, this set people off. That was not well received by the internet. That Joel was able to make burritos for his family of 8. Congratulations, for $20. Matt Walsh replies, "Since we're on the subject, I made burritos, actually enchiladas, but basically the same thing, for my family of 8 on Monday. I did not buy expensive organic ingredients or whatever because I don't care about eating organic. It was definitely more than $20. Unless you're cutting out the protein completely, I don't see how you make a real meal for a large family or even a small family on $20 in this economy." All right, so we have some kind of disagreement, and Joel came back and said, actually, yes, they did use a nice meat, but they stretched it with beans. So there's kind of this dispute going on about, how much does it actually cost to feed the family of 8? And certainly it's going to depend, right? It's going to depend on where you live. It's going to depend on the ingredients that you use. But so often with things like this, people will get caught up on, oh, well, I have to know exactly how much the burritos cost, instead of, there is something that people agree on, which is that the price of food is too high. That is the agreement. Okay, so there is this kind of agreement going on, and Joel ends up writing on Twitter, "The problem with fixing $20 burritos is actually every solution will get you called heartless. Eliminate the minimum wage. Cool. We already talked about that. Cut entitlements and national debt. You want to kill grandma." All right, so here's another example of something that is increasing prices. The federal government is spending lots of money that they get lots in taxes, but they also print lots of money, which causes inflation. And inflation means that your dollar doesn't go as far as it used to, which is a major reason why the price of food is going up. Mass deportations, racist. Teach people to be frugal. Out of touch. The only winning political message will always be the leftist proposal, which usually amounts to raise minimum wage to $1,000 an hour, start a U.S. burrito department, and give everyone a free burrito voucher, which, by the way, is how you end up with a $150 burrito. Yep, fair. a lot of wisdom there. All right, and then this is John Daniel Davidson, who writes for the Federalist, also a Hillsdale College alum. There's another way to solve the $20 burrito problem, but if you suggest it, then a bunch of conservatives on the internet will call you an anti-Semite. All right, and so what he's saying is that, well, if we just got out of Iran, we would reduce the price of burritos. Okay, this is an example of a extremely unhelpful political conversation, because if you want to talk about the war in Iran, there are real trade-offs there. And one of the things I hope that you're getting from this show, and certainly from this episode, is that life involves trade-offs. Now, I'm not going to have time to get into it because I'm already running long, but I personally think the war in Iran is a good decision. I do not want Iran to get a nuclear weapon, because I think Iran wants to murder you and they want to murder me. And I do not want to give people who want to murder Americans nuclear weapons. That's my position. And I will accept that it's going to come with higher gas prices. Now, those gas prices are not the major driver of cost inflation in the United States. But yes, that is a real trade-off. And I think it's important to acknowledge real trade-offs. But oftentimes what you're going to see online, and I think what you've maybe picked up on as I've kind of read these tweets, is that we don't get this real clash over what are the trade-offs. The Iran war is probably going to hurt Republicans in November. It's probably going to mean it definitely means Democrats have a better chance of controlling the House of Representatives. That's a real political trade-off. That's a real trade-off that exists, and it has to be weighed out. Okay, I'm going to kind of have one final thought here, and that's this. Okay, when you hear this as a teenager, especially, you have to kind of understand a couple of things. Okay, there are two parts of this debate, and they are getting conflated as people kind of go back and forth on Twitter. And again, this is why I don't like debating stuff online, because you don't get to that clash. You don't get to the weighing out of the trade-offs. You just get, oftentimes, not always, the put downs, the snarky comebacks, the things that get you attention, but don't get to those trade-offs. And then the other problem with debating online is that, once you are debating in front of an audience, you're performing, right? Like, you are performing for your team, for your side. And so to admit, hey, that's a fair point, makes you look weak, makes your side not like you, makes your views go down. And so people don't acknowledge that there is nuance in public policy. There is nuance in these debates, and that's important. All right, but teens especially, here's what you have to understand. From the policy side, there have been a number of terrible policies enacted over decades that have increased prices. And policymakers should be doing more to address that. Now, we can disagree on some of the specifics, like tariffs or the war in Iran, but absolutely, policymakers should be doing more to address high prices. And also, you have a responsibility as an individual to live your life based on personal responsibility. If burritos are more expensive now than they were 10 years ago, then in your personal life, you probably are going to have to eat fewer fast food burritos. That doesn't mean policymakers shouldn't be taking steps to fix it, but it means that as an individual, you can't fix it. But you can live your life in such a way where you live frugally, you live below your means, you eat beans and rice. My wife and I did this when we were first starting out and trying to get out of debt. We took individual responsibility for ourselves, And now, years later, we are in a much more comfortable financial position, even though the politicians haven't fixed everything. So I hope you can see that dichotomy there. Is that yes, when you go to vote, when you support certain politicians, make sure they're getting the policy right. But don't use the fact that those policies are wrong as an excuse for your own bad behavior on an individual level. Don't be a victim. You have the ability to choose. You have the ability to make your own decisions. And if you make wise decisions, yes, you too can achieve the American dream. All right, remember to subscribe on YouTube, youtube.com/@sharpening-arrows, or leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app. Be courageous like Charlie, stay sharp, and give God the glory. I'll see you next time.